The case of someone who fasts by abstaining from eating but disobeys God by all the organs is like someone who, instead of washing each organ thrice in ablution, just sponges thrice and says his prayers. Although having the advantage of resemblance in number, he has omitted obligation, so his prayer is thrown back to him. Many Sufis have explained the significant ritual of fasting and comprehended it in its spiritual framework. Slightly different from what we commonly understand about fasting, most Sufis reveal what is behind fasting and what is esoteric meaning of fasting. In this video, we scrutinize Sufi understanding of fasting in order for us to enhance our fasting, especially in this very moment, Ramadan. Abu Talib al-Makki, the 10th century Sufi, in his masterpiece Qutul Qulub, talks about fasting of the select, which consists in safeguarding 6 organs, namely eyes, ears, tongue, hands, feet, from overstepping the bounds, and heart from lowly affairs. Different from ordinary man's fasting, which focuses solely on refraining from drinking, eating, and engaging in sexual activity, the fasting of the select reportedly includes the entire human being, including the body and spirit activity. Further, Al-Ghazali adds fasting of the select. Taking a further step from Al-Makki's elucidation, Al-Ghazali reserves the safeguarding of heart and mind in the fasting of the select. He clarifies his grasp of the spirit of fasting and its mystery by claiming that these are a weakening of those faculties which are Satan's means of making one return to evil. He tries to explain why it is that jurists consider ordinary fasting valid even if the agent does not care about the inner meaning of the rite by saying that jurists have in purview only what is possible for the masses, who are normally heedless and immersed in the word. For the Sufis like Al-Ghazali, fasting is understood as assuming the traits of God's names, at-takhalluq bi akhlaqillah, by first conquering all that is sensual in human nature and achieving a nature similar to that of angels. Moreover, Al-Ghazali points out that fasting is a divine attribute of Somadaniya, an abstract noun of one of the divine names, as Somad, the self-sufficient, which means not being dependent on anything else, such as eating and drinking, and his lower soul, making a person independent and thus becoming sufficient unto himself. According to Ibn Arabi, As-Samad represents total independence from all other beings. Those who are fasting assume this character trait, albeit in a relative sense, as he or she attempts to become independent from food and other things on which he or she is always dependent. Like Al-Ghazali, Ibn Arabi also provides a tripartite division of the levels of fasting: Sawmul Dhahir or Sawmul Am, Sawmul Nafs, and finally Sawmul Qalb. The first level is fasting that fulfills all conditions required by fiqh. The second is the soul stops commanding the organs what is not wholesome, and the final level is emptying the heart for divine descent into it. Perhaps it is with this type of fasting in mind that Ibn Arabi says in addressing his soul, quote-unquote, observe a fasting from the word and don't break your fast. No one is worthy of breaking this fast with except the God of the creatures. With regard to the Hadith Qudsi, fasting is for me and I am its reward, Ibn Arabi analyzes the Arabic verb Soma yasumu to explain its meaning, exaltedness and abstention. The exaltedness and uniqueness of this type of ritual are the connection. Due to its uniqueness, fasting is one of the forms that points beyond themselves to the uniqueness of God. In Ibn Arabi's words, just as Notes is like unto him, there is nothing like unto fasting with regard to the manner of worship. According to Ibn Arabi, fasting is not just an act of physical abstinence from food and drink, but also an opportunity for spiritual growth. It is through fasting that the person can cleanse his heart from earthly desires and replace them with a greater love for God. He emphasizes the importance of seeing beyond the physical realm and instead seek a connection to the divine word. Ibn Arabi makes another mention of the connection between fasting and the divine quality when he discusses the jurisprudential dispute over whether it is preferable to fast or not during travel. Quote, "Those who take into account that fasting is unique and that it is one of the qualities of Al-Haq says that it is better it has to fast, and those who consider it a form of worship and thus a quality expressing debasement and dependence and more worthy of the servant said that not fasting is better." The significance of this instance comes from the fact that Ibn Arabi appears to be suggesting two different ways to view the practice of fasting, either as a manifestation of divine quality or as a form of worship. Evidently, the hadith Qudsi fasting is for me, which means as one of my qualities, implies or rather superimposes the earlier point of view. Since it is impossible to tell whether someone is actually fasting, this goes directly against the common idea that these words only signify that a Muslim fasts solely for the sake of God. Ibn Arabi explains the ritual of fasting during the month of Ramadan, among many other things, with his unique cosmological view of the divine names, according to which nothing emerges in existence unless it has a root in the divine side in the form of a divine quality manifested by a divine name. Ibn Arabi holds the peculiar understanding that the very word of the month, Ramadan, is one of the divine names. As a result, this divine name is responsible for the occurrence itself. Abstinence from eating and drinking is denominated in Arabic by the word imsak that Ibn Arabi has extracted from the Quranic verse. Truly God maintains the heavens and the earth, lest they fall apart. And for breaking the fast, Ibn Arabi alludes to the term fitr in the Quranic verse, "Praise be to God, originator of the heavens and the earth." So with regard to the question of duration of abstinence during Ramadan, Ibn Arabi mystifies fasting by associating the two terms stated earlier with the divine names that he has taken from the two Quranic verses. Quote, "The setting of sun is the expiry of the tenure of property of the divine name Ramadan. Although it remains as it is, it does not lose its property, for it has another effect in us, and that is standing in prayer. Its place is taken by the name Fatir of heavens and earth, and then by the name Mumsik, and the name Fatir remains governing the sick, the traveler, the suckling mother, and the pregnant woman." Ibn Arabi's view of the travelers who are fasting, which he does not regard as a virtuous act, further demonstrates the identification of Ramadan as one of the divine names. This issue provides him with an opportunity to delve into influence of divine names on the traveler upon the path. Quotes, "The wayfarer is the traveler in the stations with the divine names, so the divine name Ramadan does not require him to preserve either obligatory or supererogatory fasting. This is why the Prophet has said that it is not one of the virtues to fast while traveling." Ibn Arabi's commentary on the word Fajr in the Quranic verse is one intriguing example of his mystical interpretation of the fasting practice. It's entering until the white thread and the black thread of the tone become clear to you. Ibn Arabi appears to be returning to the former legalistic interpretation in this passage after having elevated it to its mystical significance earlier. That is to say, he cites his philosophical-mystical understanding in support of his juristic standpoints regarding the dispute over the Quranic word in question. White or red may be the tone, and red is earlier than white. According to Ibn Arabi, there is a spectrum of colors that ranges from black to white, and all other colors not only stretching between these two poles but also generating from a mixture of whiteness and blackness. Let's note this arrangement of extreme poles and intermediate reality as essential structural principles of Ibn Arabi's ontology in passing. The polarity of Wujud and Adam, which is mediated by relative reality of the created realm, is the more fundamental paradigm of Ibn Arabi's ontology. Nevertheless, Ibn Arabi chooses to comprehend white tone over red tone, because in accordance with his mystical theory of color, the former is simpler and purer than the latter. Quote, "The basis of colors is black and white. Other colors are intermediate between them, generated by the mixture of black and white by which dust color, red, green, and other colors appear." Whatever is near white has more of the quality of white in it than the quality of black, and it is the same with the other end of the spectrum. The hadith reports this thing from Hudayfa about red rather than white. He said that it is day even though the sun has not risen. This is possible. The white mentioned in the Quran is not something probable. Therefore, we prefer the white to be red by two strong aspects, the Quran and the lack of probability. The principle of belief, which is the white, is pure for God and unmixed. The red designates investigation by striving. That is the jurisdiction of the intellect. And the investigation of the intellect mingles with the senses by means of the imagination, because it derives from reflection by means of the imagination through the senses. It takes either what the senses give it or what the conceptual faculty gives it. It is conclusive regarding what it gives it, even though a detracting doubt might affect it. This is why we accord the red twilight to the opinion of the striver, since red is a color produced by the mixture of black and white. It is a particular mixture. Ibn Arabi views fasting in the month of Ramadan as a spiritual opportunity for growth and development. He asserts that through fasting, individuals could develop discipline and self-restraint, discover their spiritual nature, and cultivate a deeper understanding of the divine. He considers fasting an important part of the spiritual journey to reach enlightenment. Back to Al-Ghazali's exposition, he divides fasting into three levels. First, fasting of the ordinary. It is just holding hunger and thirst. Second, fasting of the select. Those who fast at this level not only abstain hunger and thirst, but also their five senses from useless activities. Third, fasting of the select. Those who fast at this level suppress hunger and thirst, elude vain activities, and empties the heart and soul from other than God. Therefore, Prophet Muhammad has ever said, there are people who fast and get nothing from their fast except hunger. Even though generally the goal of fasting is to control one's biological nature, it doesn't seem conceivable that this is the only element of this required devotion. Muslims teach themselves through fasting to be able to restrain their irrational desires and animal ego, which have been ingrained in them for the previous 11 months. In order to control his greed and tyrannical ego, which he typically permits to control and subjugate himself, a person must abstain from eating, drinking, engaging in sexual activities, and other activities that break the fast. This makes it obvious that the fast is an attempt to capture the desire of the self or ego. If you like my videos, you can monetarily support me, no pressure, via PayPal, and the link is in the comments below. See you next time.